everyone, Cynthia here with Greenstyle, welcoming you to my sewing loft and day 4 of the Spark Tight Sew Along. I can't believe we're already on day 4, just today and tomorrow, and we will be finishing up our videos. This week has just flown by. We still have a good amount of sewing to do though. I think you're gonna find it quick and easy, and I think you're gonna be loving the Sparks Tights. Today we are going to be doing the gusset, and we are gonna attach the front and the gusset to the back that you created yesterday, and then we're gonna stitch up the side seams. I think you're gonna love it so much. I have, as always, posted hyperlinks in the information of this video. So if there's a particular step that you wanna see and you don't wanna watch the whole video, just go down to those show notes and click on the hyperlink that goes with the step you want to watch, and it'll fast forward you straight to that step in the video. This sew along is sponsored by Sew Dynamic Fabric, which feature Reprieve fabric made from recycled bottles. If you are catching this video before April 20th, 2022, then you still have a chance to use your 15% off coupon to Sew Dynamics, and I encourage you to do so. I purchased from them myself, and I love everything I've received, especially this Misty Trees panel that I used to make this beautiful set, which you have probably seen many times by now. Take advantage of that, and also the 25% off coupon from Greenstyle for this pattern. Everything is linked in the show notes, including my blog post and the Greenstyle Facebook group, where you can join in and enter pictures of your completed garments to try and win a $50 coupon code to Sew Dynamic, and also some free patterns from Greenstyle. So let's go ahead and get started with that gusset. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think you're gonna have so much fun today. I will talk to you soon, and I look forward to hearing from you. So leave me comments and notes everywhere. I will see them all and comment back to you. Talk to you soon.
Okay, let's get that gusset attached. We are going to start with this lovely back piece that we created yesterday, and then we're going to bring over our gusset piece. Find the center of your gusset and the center of your back piece, and it's right there at the seam. And then you'll take the gusset and flip it with right sides together onto the back piece, lining up that center spot. And you'll see the dots that you've marked on your gusset, and you will also have dots marked on your back piece as well. So first pin the center of the gusset to the center of the back piece, and then find those two dots, line them up and pin them. And you'll find that you'll need to stretch the gusset a little bit to get to that first dot on both of the sides. So I'm just checking to make sure that my dots are lined up. And again, you're going to have to pull that gusset over a little bit to get to the dot on the back of the pants. And then for the remainder of the gusset, you'll just lay it down, and you won't need to stretch that over to your dot. But see, I'm demonstrating how I'm going to have to stretch the gusset just about that much. It's not a ton, but it's a little bit. There should be a little bit of a bubble in there. All right, and then we will get that all lined up, and you'll see the dot on the other side of the pants should line up with the bottom of your gusset. My dot is actually moved over a little bit because I removed length on my pants but forgot to adjust where my dot goes according to how much length I removed. But again, if you just lay your gusset down and pin it evenly with the fabric, then that will be perfect. Now over to the machine, and I am going to start stitching right at the bottom of that gusset and then stitch all the way down. If you're using a serger, you're going to want to start stitching before the gusset, and you're going to want to serge onto the pant so that you can get over to that 3/8 inch seam allowance. Again, holding my threads with my right hand and pulling them back gently as I get started. I like to use the zigzag stitch with 1 stitch width and 2.5 stitch length. Stitching all the way down, and then remembering when I get to that center portion, I'm going to have to stretch the gusset slightly between both of those dots, and then for the remainder of the gusset it will lie flat. And then you'll stitch all the way off the edge. And again, if you're using your serger, you're going to stitch off the edge of the gusset and then off the edge of the fabric. Alright, so let's take a look, and you'll see the 3/8 inch seam line goes right around the center of the gusset. Now we're back over at my cover stitch machine, and again, please remember that this is completely optional step. In fact, if this is your first pair of Spark Tights, you may just want to skip the decorative stitching altogether. So take a look at how that gusset is attached to the pants. I am going to pull that seam open because I did the stitching on the sewing machine. Open up that seam between the pant and the gusset, and that is where I'm going to do my decorative stitching. And you see how the edge of the fabric sort of folds until it's open on the pant. You're going to have it do that. If you used a serger, you'll just again push the seam to one side and serge along the edge of that. This is completely up to you. It's your artistic interpretation of where you want that decorative stitching to be. You can put it to the side of the seam, you can put it on the outside of the seam, you can put it on the inside of the seam, or right down the center like I do. Again, that's your artistic license, and you put those stitches where you want them to be for your decorative stitches. Clip off those hanging threads. Actually, I did not stitch as much off the edge of the gusset at the beginning as I would have liked to, and I didn't use my little extra piece of fabric, so I went ahead and tied a knot on the end there because I don't want those stitches to start coming undone before I have a chance to lock them in. But give you a good look at what it looks like from the front and from the back. And I'm not worried about the fact that that little edge there isn't. That's okay. It will get sewn into the seam. So that's going to be part of the inner seam allowance when I attach on the other side. So there you go. Now that the gusset is attached to the back, we need to attach the front piece to the gusset. So there's a good look at it from the inside. And then we'll flip it back over, and we're going to bring over our front piece, and it's going to look a lot smaller than the back piece. So don't worry about that. That's how it's supposed to look. Now we're going to flip it so that they are right sides facing, and we've got the center of the front near that center of the gusset. Find that center of the gusset and the center of your front piece, line them up and pin them together. And then you need to search for those dots, the matching dots on the gusset and the matching dots on the front piece. And just like before, you're going to have to stretch slightly between those dots. So you'll have a little bit of a bubble there on the front piece. And then everything else should lay flat all the way down. Get that pinned. When you get to the spot where you attach the edge of the gusset to the back piece, just make sure you pin so that all of those raw edges line up very well, and that will give you a nice transition from the part of the pants with gusset to the part without the gussets. Now we're back at the sewing machine again, and of course you could use your serger machine. And I just want to give you a good look at all of this pinning, how it looks at the transitions of the gusset, and how I pinned everything together. So there you see that I've pinned right along the edge, and you can see where the fabric of the pant has a small little fold from where the gusset is attached to where it is not attached, and that is expected, and you'll just stitch right over that small little fold there. a really good look at what that transition looks like, where my seam goes, and it just goes 3/8 of an inch straight across, but diagonally over the edge of that gusset, and you can see where the seam takes in that little bit that wasn't finished on the edge of my cover stitching where I tied that knot. It's completely enclosed. So at this point, you will decorative stitch that long seam that you just created, and that will put a decorative stitch over the other side of the gusset, and it'll cross right on over where you did the first line. And just a little tip, you'll see me realize in just a moment, when you start doing your cover stitch, you want the part of the pant that is less bulky to be facing in toward the machine. So that's why I just turned my pant around right there. I realized that the front part that's smaller was on the left, and I prefer that part to be on the right because that's the part that goes in that little throat area there. And as you approach the gusset, just make sure that you're opening up the seam that you've just stitched. So you want to open up the seam between the gusset and the front piece, and make sure that you're stitching in between that seam right throughout here. If you used a sewing machine to make these stitches, you may notice some of the fabric, the excess of the seam allowance is being pulled in because of that curve. You can just snip the top of the curve like this, and then cut out small wedges from underneath the bottom of the curve, and that will alleviate any of that pulling that you will be noticing. If you used a serger, all of that excess seam allowance would have gotten cut away by your serger, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. But it's an easy little fix, and then you won't have any pulling happening on the inside of your pant. So now we are going to close up those side seams, and we'll start to really have what looks like pants. So just line up the side seams. Start by lining up the notches on the front and the back, and then with the top and the bottom, and then you can add pins in between if you want. And at this point, we are back at the sewing machine or serger using a stretch stitch or serger stitch, 3/8 inch seam allowance again. And we're simply going to stitch up those two side seams. Again, you can use the lightning bolt stitch. I prefer the zigzag with a width of 1.0 and a length of 2.5. Always making sure to do a couple of front then back stitches at the beginning and end to lock in your stitches. Now this is one of the trickier steps if you're doing the reverse cover stitch, is to stitch down that long side seam with your reverse cover stitch. So you're going to have to stitch all the way through that long tube. And what I like to do is put my pant inside out with the seam I want to stitch on top, and then I'm just going to start pushing the other side of the pant through the bottom of the foot. And so you'll see just bunching up in my hands on the top of the machine, and then along the back I've pushed all the rest of it through so that I have an opening now in the center, and the foot is right in the center of that long bunch of fabric. Take the bottom of the seam that I want to cover stitch and put it under that foot. Sort of stretch out the fabric or smooth out the fabric, and then just start doing the reverse cover stitch just like an inch or two at a time. And I'm just going to smooth it out little by little and push it through. There's going to be a lot of tension, a lot of fabric pressing and pushing. I was trying to clear it. You want to be clearing it away from your foot as much as possible and pushing it toward the back as you go. This is very tedious. It is not pretty. It's never a pretty step, and it's hard to demonstrate. Again, lots of practice, lots of patience, and you may have to redo it once or twice the first few times that you do it, but just keep at it. You will get it. You'll get the hang of it. You'll get the feel for it. Recommend first trying this on a pair of shorts or capri before you attempt to do a full length pant, because those are much easier, because the hole at the bottom is going to be much larger, and then the length of the tube that you're stitching through is a lot shorter. It gets a lot easier once you start to get toward the end. It's the beginning that's the hardest. Once you get to the end, just push and work your fabric through the machine so we can take a look at what that seam looks like now. It should be one long stitch with all of your beautiful work visible. And if it is a little wobbly, don't worry. It'll be stretched out when you wear it, and probably nobody will ever notice. If it's super wobbly and you just can't stand it, you can pull out your cover stitch and try it again. You will get better every time you do it. And here's a look on the inside.